Thinking about an MBA but dreading the GMAT or GRE? You're not alone. The first hurdle in your MBA application journey is the GMAT or GRE. And with round one deadlines only 5 months away, now is the time to start your preparation. I am Poonam Tandon, founder and president of my essay review. Since 2011, I have guided applicants for top MBA programs. Over the years, I have interviewed many successful MER students about their application experience, test prep strategies, and B school experience. You can find their interviews right here on my channel. This video kicks off our MBA Applications series, wherein MER students will be sharing their application experience, insights, and advice that will help you navigate your MBA application journey. You will hear directly from 3 MBR students. The first is Katherine, a second-year student at UCLA. She will share her experience and insights on GRE prep. Second is Tyler. He is first-year student at USC. He will share his advice on GMAT Focus Edition. Third is Shekhar. He is 2023 Chicago Booth graduate. He will share his advice on GMAT Classic. So let's get started. Katherine, you earned a stellar GRE score of 332. Can you tell our viewers about your GRE prep strategy? What resources and methods you use to achieve such a strong GRE score?
Actually, I have 335.
I'm sorry. I correct myself.
No, but
335. Okay.
I think my story for prepare GRE should be a little bit different because when I applied for master program after graduate from undergraduate years, I take GMAT. That time I don't have a pretty good score that even I have multiple choice. My highest score is like 710. So it makes me feel like not pretty confident about this kind of exam. So when I decided to apply for MBA, I want to try with GRE because I don't want to say GMAT anymore in my life. And I think my working experience helps me a lot. And this time I feel like the rating question, cause verbal part is much more difficult for Chinese students, especially like English is not my mother language, and I do a lot of vocabulary, that is memorization. And the other part is I think logic is pretty helpful. Like working makes my logic is kind of like becoming different than the students. I cannot see why, but that is so amazing. Like I think that is a magic for this kind of exam. This time when I say same thing, I do feel much more easier and much more logic than before. So I think vocabulary and the more better logic helps me a lot. But I need to say that quantitative part GRE do difficult than GMAT. But I think for Asia students that will still be easy thing. But I just feel this one is a little bit tricky, but still doable. Yeah.
What advice you have what advice you have for applicants who are preparing for GRE?
I will say need to start early. Like first of all, you need to when you decide that you wanted to apply for the top MBA, you know that you need to have a high score. So the earlier you started to prepare it, the better. Which means if one time you don't have the good score enough that you can have time to another one. But the time that I mean to prepare it start early enough is not like you make it so long. Like I study 1 hour a day and it takes me a year long. I don't think that makes sense, but maybe it's the personal thing, because my personality is like I need to make things shortly and manageable. And if like I can study to 3 to 4 hours a day, that will makes me like grow up quicker. And my memory is also fresh. And also a point I think it's better to make the study period tighter is because that will you will know that there's a deadline, and it will be better to push you to finish it quickly, so you will have a stress that I need to have the exam shortly, so I need to do it. If that is like 1 year, you can say I can do it tomorrow and tomorrow and no time enough.
Destination.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I also need to have a good preparation time, but also need to have enough to have a schedule for leave enough time for the score come up. Yeah.
So the key takeaways from Katherine's advice are: first, choose the right test that fits your strengths. Second, leverage your professional experience to enhance your performance. Third, start early and structure your prep. Before pursuing MBA, they have to take the test.
That is true.
It is an essential component of MBA applications. And you took GMAT Focus Edition, which is
I
a
did.
test you secured 675. Yeah. Which
Mhm.
equates to GMAT score of 720.
Right.
So, since it is a new test and there is a lot of curiosity around this test and how it compares to the classic GMAT, so would you like to share your experiences and advice regarding this test, how to approach this test?
Absolutely. No, I could talk about the GMAT Focus Edition for hours. I mean, it's felt
Wow.
like it was months of my of I guess last fall, well, end of summer, early fall, really preparing for it. Well, I think some schools are test optional, but for me, wanting to shoot for USC and UCLA with my GPA, I mean, I had a solid GPA coming out of college, don't get me wrong, but I knew the GMAT would be something where I could set myself apart. And that if I wanted a chance to get into these schools, taking the GMAT and getting a good score on the GMAT Focus Edition, would be a weapon that, if done properly and gotten a good score, would help me. So I was, fully on board, committed to the GMAT Focus Edition. And keep in mind, so the GMAT Focus Edition came out, I believe in the fall, in September, but it was running in parallel with the current GMAT. And then as of this past January 2024, that's when the normal GMAT went defunct and the GMAT Focus Edition took place, replaced it full time. And I think in terms of study processing, or my study process, it's a little bit, I think, for me, first of just refreshing myself on basic stuff that I haven't really done since high school, right? Math, basic algebra, and stuff like that. But for the most part, being a time test and a shorter test overall, it was, for me, was speed, just in the beginning, making sure I know the information and I can, do practice problems and get them right. But then after taking a couple practice exams, I was like, all right, I'm not getting the score that I want, and I wasn't finishing all the sections. So that's when really working on speed and doing practice problems, really, really focusing on speed, because you only have 45 minutes for each section, and there's about 20 questions per section. So maybe 2 minutes per question. And by the time it takes you to finish reading the question and figuring out what you have to do and then actually doing the problem, and then, God forbid you want to double check your work, it's, you got to be on to the next question. So speed. And it was, a very strenuous process, but I'm glad when I finally closed the books, I didn't have to study anymore, no more practice problems. So that was a really good feeling. And in terms of scoring, I was a little perplexed because I had only known the scoring for the normal GMAT. And when I finished taking the test, I took it at a exam center, and I got my score back instantly. It spits it out at the end. And I was like, okay, 675. I mean, that's solid for the normal GMAT. So I was like, okay, I'll probably want to take it again. But it wasn't until I looked at the conversion charts of what it would equivalent, or what the equivalent would be for the normal GMAT. And I was like, okay, 720. I was like, if that's really the case, then I'm content with that. So yeah, you know, I I was moving quick, got the test. I finished taking the test around Christmas time, and by early January, I had to submit applications. So,
And any advice particularly on how to approach data insights questions?
sure, yeah. So for me, that was the section I actually scored the highest on, because the scoring obviously is done based off your percentile. So there's 20 something questions for each section, and I got more data questions wrong than I got math questions wrong, or the quantitative. However, I got a much higher score on the data as opposed to the quantitative, because I suppose most people do really well on the quantitative. So I finished, I think, in the 70s. I only got 3 or 4 questions wrong in quantitative, but I finished in the 76th percentile, where versus the data section, I maybe got 4 or 5 wrong, but finished in the high 90s in terms of percentile. So with that being said, knowing that you have a little bit more of a buffer room with the data, knowing that that might not, you don't have to get as many right to get a good score. It's really, I think, stopping and asking yourself what the question's asking. And I know for me a lot, I would make silly mistakes on the data section. And I almost equate it to like a reading comprehension, like how well can you read what's asking? Because a lot of times the math or the logic isn't that complicated. It's just like, are they trying to trick me? Are they not trying to trick me? Like, thoroughly read the question, right? The ones where you have 2 statements, statement 1, statement 2, right? And then it asks you, is one statement alone true, or is the second statement alone true, or they depend on each other? It's really just taking your time and reading the questions thoroughly.
Keeping your
Yeah.
calm,
Yeah.
taking time to read your questions and understand your questions and then answering.
Yeah. Because for the most part, it's all, I mean, I guess this is what people say too. Like, there obviously has to be studying done for the GMAT in terms of like the math section. But in terms of reading comprehension and some of the data stuff, I mean, for the most part, it's really just testing your intuition and your logic and how well can you reason.
Right.
So, obviously you want to do as many practices as you can, so you're familiar with the flow and how they ask questions, and you can become better at them. But my biggest advice with that is, for the most part, I have faith that you'll be smart enough to figure out the answer. It's just, can you have the composure to take a deep breath and figure it out in a time crunch.
Good. And you said you took months to prepare for GMAT?
I did. I probably started studying in the beginning of the summer. And for me, it wasn't, because I knew I wanted to take it in the late fall, near the winter. So I was like, I'm just not going to just take a month or 2 and just really cram. I'll just buy the books. Every couple days, I'll do a couple practice problems. And then, life gets in the way, work gets in the way. 3 or 4 days go by, haven't done anything, but then I'll have some free time and I'll study for an hour or 2. So it was sort of spaced out, but yeah, for the most part, I did study probably throughout the summer, and then ended up taking the test, and fall, I should say, and then ended up taking the test around the holiday season. So I probably studied more than most.
Key takeaways from Tyler's advice are: number 1, start early and be consistent. Number 2, prioritize speed and accuracy. Number 3, stay calm under pressure.
Now let's talk about GMAT. GMAT is a critical component of the MBA application process, and you scored a stellar 780 GMAT score. So, what are your suggestions for those people? What are your pointers, guidelines for people who are struggling to ace the GMAT?
So after having gone through, the entire GMAT process, what I have found is that every individual has his or her is going to have his or her own challenges and solutions, and then their individual journey as far as GMAT is concerned. Uh, uh, but at the same time, I understand that it could be frustrating when the score that pops out on the screen does not really is you do not feel is representative of the value that you add or of your professional abilities. Uh, uh, One thing that I really feel is or that from my experience I could say is that one thing that I maybe was something that is not done by everybody, and was something that I did was being consistent. So I prepared for my GMAT for 5 months, and I do not recollect there being any one single day where I did not practice, even if that was for 30 minutes. But I would always practice, even if work was killing me, even if personal commitments took a lot of my time. But even if it was for those 30 minutes, I would still practice. Uh, as such, as far as tips are concerned, maybe what I could advise on is what I did, what was how I structured my journey. So as far as quantitative ability is concerned, uh, I mean I really had. My understanding was that it is about testing my comfort with concepts. So the first thing that you do is you strengthen the concept. Are consider or you excel in the understanding of the concepts, and then you start thinking about the application in a time bound manner, and taking time tests, and exploring the wonderful resource that GMAT Club has. I think is the key here. uh, as an international student and somebody who is from South Asia, I've always found that quantitative abilities is really not something that peers from my geography struggle with. It is generally verbal ability, and verbal ability with its three sections, sentence correction, critical reasoning, and RC, reading comprehension. Each requires a different set of understanding. I felt that sentence correction for me was something that I could easily master, and because it is more predictable, it is more grammar oriented, it is more quantitative like. So my focus was on really excelling in sentence correction, and ensuring that if there were 12 questions, all 12 of them were correct for me, or maybe one or two wrong. But that was what I did for sentence correction. For critical reasoning and for sentence correction, I have found that the strategy guides that the popular strategy guides that you can access on GMAT Club are really helpful to really set the stage. And I went back to them multiple times during the course of my preparation. For sentence correction in particular, I also found this video series by video series called Thursdays with Ron, which I believe you can now find on YouTube also. That was very helpful for me, and I would advise everybody to at least do that once during their preparation cycle. Reading comprehension for me was something that was never predictable, and I could never really, I could never really figure if what would be the number, what would be my accuracy in the in those questions. But as some, but of course you would need to prepare for reading comprehension, and what I would advise is, what I have found useful is that you know reading novels, or books, or even newspapers for that matter. While these would be helpful for to generally become better, or make better your language skills. I really do not think that they are directly related to how you will be comfortable, or how you would be or your comfort with reading comprehension, comprehension passages. I've felt that if you want to be better at solving reading comprehension questions, you must read more comprehensions. You must make yourself comfortable with reading those often boring and often abstract passages, and making sense of them and becoming comfortable with the language and the structure that they use. Um, I think that was about it as far as the strategies are concerned. I am always I would be available. I think I'm sure Poonam would share my contact details. I would be available to anybody who's looking to who's struggling with preparing a robust GMAT strategy. I could take a look at their strategy. I could take a look at what they're doing, where they're going wrong, and maybe advise however I could. But mind you, I am no expert. I when I went for the test in 2019, I was not expecting a 780. I would have been happy even with a 730, 740, or a 750, because the test is so unpredictable. Because of the RC the RC unpredictability that I just mentioned. So
You're being too
all the
modest.
best.
You're being too modest in saying that I wasn't expecting 780. I would have been happier with 730, but you earned it.
But really, Poonam, I would like to say that the test is so unpredictable that you generally really do not you are not sure what you're going to get. If you get that score, it's good. But as far as my target range was concerned, it was never a 780. It was, of course, the highest that you could get, but 750 was also something that
Mhm.
that I would have been happy with. But nobody would complain with a 780.
Of course. And thank you so much for all these valuable tips to prepare for GMAT.
Key takeaways from Shekhar's advice are: number one, be consistent with your preparation. Number two, focus on your strengths and weaknesses. Number three, use mocks and other trusted resources. To sum up, the three top tips from these successful candidates are: start early and be consistent. Number two, tailor your preparation to your strengths and weaknesses. Number three, stay calm and trust yourself. If you like this video, you don't want to miss our upcoming video about application strategy, planning, and preparation. So hit subscribe and stay tuned. Bye.